Whatever you have here is unholy and must be destroyed.
Hey everyone, this is the Strangeland Podcast. We've been gone for a while.
Some time now, but we're back.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but this is probably a year or something. Look, we've had a bunch of existential, crisis problems, things, but I don't want to promise anything exact, but we are going to try to get back into this as best as we can.
Yeah, we took a little break. It's a lot of work. I don't think we really knew how much work it was when we got into this. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think now we're trying to figure out the best way to go about doing it. And we're just trying to experiment with some things that maybe won't make us feel as burnt out as before. So hopefully we can figure that out and start uploading.
Yeah,
more
and
often.
thanks to everybody for listening. We love you guys. Appreciate it. All the feedback. We still get tons of emails all the time. We haven't put out an episode in over a year, so all that's really appreciated. Everyone, even if we didn't get back to you for whatever reason, we really appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Keep it up.
Yeah. And, before we get into this, I just want to say if for some reason, you hear something in here in this episode that maybe we missed, then just let us know. We appreciate people not being dickheads because some people are. But if we miss something, just let us know and we will talk to you about it.
Well, in this case, the case that we're going to talk about today, I feel like you could talk for 6 hours. There's so much information. So we're going to try and condense it a little bit, give you the facts.
Yeah.
And we hope you like it. Shout out, by the way, to our one Patreon subscriber, I Need Caffeine. This is a long time coming. Thank you for the support. We appreciate you so much.
Yeah, and on that note, maybe we'll put the Patreon link in the bottom. I don't know. Anyways, today we were talking about Jerome Henry Brutos. He, as you probably know from the title, he goes by a couple different names, though. He goes by the Lust Killer or the Shoe Fetish Slayer. And I've known about this guy for a while, but I really got interested in him after the Mindhunter episode that portrayed him. Today's episode will probably be a little bit shorter. Honestly, it's just mostly to get our toes in the water or whatever you say, and just kind of to test the waters. So it might be a little shorter, but hopefully it's still entertaining. Like I said, I found out about this guy. I didn't find out about him, but I got more interested in him through the Mindhunter episode that had him in. He's a freak. So he goes by Jerry in his day-to-day life. He was born in Webster, South Dakota on the 31st of January, 1939. He was the younger of two sons, and this was not something that his mother was very happy about. After the birth of his older brother, and when she got pregnant again, she was really looking forward to having a daughter. When she found out that Jerry was going to be a boy, she was very displeased. This would result in his mother being extremely overbearing with Jerry. She would verbally, emotionally, and even physically abuse him. And this would be one of the vocal points in his early life. Being treated by his own mother in such a way, it not only implanted ideas of how he would view women in his later life, which was with a very misogynistic mindset, but in general, when a parental figure treats their children rather in such a way, it just has very bad results.
That is like the blueprint for raising a serial killer is too.
Yeah.
A lot of these
Partially.
guys have the same sort of type of upbringing,
Yeah, a lot of them do, and only a few don't. And and when Jerry should have been looking for comfort from his mother, but instead he got hate. And Yeah, when he was a child, his family moved around a few times before ending up in Salem, Oregon, which is where he would spend the rest of his life.
When he was 5 years old, he developed a fetish for women's shoes. And this is said to have started when he found a pair of high heel shoes at a local junkyard. After this, he would attempt to steal the shoes of his first grade teacher. I believe that she had like taken off her shoes, put them behind her desk, and he ended up taking them. And that's pretty crazy for a little kid right away.
For 5.
He started to show like an interest very, very early. That sort of sexual tension and fetish started to build from a very young age. Now, he also had an extreme fetish for women's underwear as well, which makes sense given the context. He would end up spending his teenage years in and out of psychiatric hospitals. And I heard his, whatever the doctors had diagnosed him with, I heard it, we don't have it written down here, but it was a real old-timey... Apparently, I learned a little bit about this. They had diagnosed him with schizophrenia, but back in the day, schizophrenia was like a general mental illness. Yeah. Like it was something they just labeled everyone with to be able to like do weird experimental tests and stuff. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so it said that he stole women's panties from his neighbors during this time as well. Now, something he would also do in his teenage years would be to track down and stalk women. And this is very predictive of his future life. Yeah, it's such a good foreshadowing because this was his thing, you know?
And I mean, something you would see, like you said earlier, when we're talking about how his childhood was, that's, it's what you see often,
Yeah. So he was chasing down women, knocking them out, sometimes choking them. And this is early on in his life. Now, he wasn't killing early on in his life, but he was definitely following women home.
Yeah, and that's, that's kind of the thing. I mean, you have to start off small and you build up and build up and build up and eventually... you're killing them.
Sure, yeah, but it all starts with just following women to their house, knocking them out, and taking their shoes, and hightailing it out of there. Very, very strange.
And I wrote on here, I took for myself to remind myself to tell a story of this person that I knew. I'm not even gonna do this. I shouldn't even brought it up.
No, you have to now.
There was this guy in the town that we grew up in, and this one time, he was... Okay, look, I'm not going to say what his name was. Obviously, he was kind of weird, but he would do stuff like this. And I don't know what happened to him now. I was with one of my ex-girlfriends, and we were walking down the street, and he ran up to us and tried to, like... not necessarily force her, but really tried to, like, make her take off her shoes so he could sniff her shoes. I'll tell you who the girl was after this is over, because you know her.
Do I know the guy?
No, I mean maybe if you saw him around the town, but I feel kind of bad sharing this, but I'm not gonna say his name. And
it's crazy.
Who knows where he's at now? I have other stories of that dude. He used to run around doing a bunch of crazy stuff. Anyways, back to Jerry. Sorry about that. When he was 17 years old, he abducted a woman, held her at knife point, and forced her to undress in front of him. He took pictures of her naked and threatened to stab her if she did not do what he said. So he's obviously now starting to show even more characteristics of a controlling killer. Like we said before, pretty much, he was sent to the Oregon State Hospital for 9 months. He spent the 9 months in the psychiatric ward following the arrest for that crime. They released him, even though it was very obvious that he had developed some very deep ingrained issues with women, and these issues were manifesting in a very dangerous sexual way at this time. In fact, while he was in the hospital for this crime, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, like we talked about, and extreme misogyny. Yet they let him go after only 9 months.
Another interesting thing, during his 9 months there, he was allowed to go to school back and forth as well. So, and he's in a small town. So like kids know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure, he wasn't a popular guy. He was sort of overlooked by everyone around him. But like, imagine, getting in trouble for, knocking women out, and you're still allowed to like go to school. I don't know. That's just strange
and
to
you're
me.
released in 9 months. It's
He
weird.
just kind of went right under the radar, and very strange.
Yeah,
They live among us, people.
they do. They do.
So even with all of that happening in his life, he still managed to graduate high school. After this, he became an electronics technician. And during the next 4 years, it's hard to know exactly what Jerry did about his sexual urges. We really don't have any evidence to show that he committed any crimes during that time. He may have just not gotten caught, however, though, and I'm sure that was the case. He was doing weirdo stuff.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if he was killing women? Who knows to the extent of what he was doing? But probably in the 4 years, he was probably doing something.
Right.
He just wasn't caught, like you said.
Well, during this 4 years, he would actually get married and have 2 children.
So maybe he was just really busy.
He was busy.
Doing that.
He was busy with a
Living
lot
a
of
normal
stuff.
life for a minute.
Trying to, yeah, I'm sure. Now, it was quite clear from early on that Jerry had some more unusual requests from his wife when it came to their sexual activity. One of his demands was that she would walk around naked in the house while doing housework, in high heels, of course. I can only assume this was when the children were at school or elsewhere. Now, there is stories, though, of what is his wife's name? Jeez, I can't remember it for the life of me right now. But she talks about when their daughter reached about 4 years old. She was like, maybe we shouldn't be walking. Maybe we're traumatizing our kid. We shouldn't be walking around the house naked anymore. So that kind of happened. I mean, they were definitely naked in the house with their kids.
Yeah,
but,
I read that too. And his wife's name was Darcy.
Darcy, that's right. Right. So, Darcy did kind of at least have that sort of motherly instinct, like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. But,
yeah,
I mean, she still indulged in whatever he requested.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, he would be taking pictures of her.
Oh, yeah, lots of pictures. Yeah. I didn't say that.
Yeah, while they were doing all that. That's insane. And, we'll bring... we're actually about to bring it up, sort of the extent to what his wife had to put up with. One day, Jerry came home to his wife, Darcy, and showed her that he was wearing women's underwear himself. And this was apparently too much for his wife to take. They did not get divorced at this time or even split up, but they definitely didn't get divorced. I don't think there was any split up.
People just didn't get divorced all like that.
Yeah, it was
back then
definitely
also.
different back then than it is today. Because, if I came home and my girlfriend saw me wearing some stuff, she might freak out. But it did greatly affect their marriage. Jerry would become more recluse from his wife and his children. And by the way, I just want to say real quick, as far as fetishes go, like, people can have fetishes, and a lot of times they don't. Obviously, like, we're not going to judge anyone. They're not going to like turn into some crazy serial killer thing. If he wants to wear women's stuff, that's his thing. But to force it onto your wife, who obviously doesn't like it, that's a big issue.
Well, I kind of feel bad for him too, in a way, because even like him being, let's say he gathered the courage to like show her his women's underwear he had on, and for whatever reason he liked it, but he goes to show her and then immediately is turned down, and probably made to feel a little bit like a freak, and no one likes that.
Yeah, and he already does feel that way, and I think that's a good point, because he would become more recluse from his wife and his children after this, and he would spend a lot of time in his workshop, which was just his garage that he had locked the door. He had a locked door to his workshop garage, and only he was allowed to go into it.
In his garage, by the way, the way he justified keeping it locked up all the time is because he would work with like resins and different like poisonous, quote unquote poisonous, like substances. So he would tell the kids to stay out of there, tell his wife to stay out of there. He had projects going on.
And
so.
Yeah, exactly. So they knew not to go in there because of that. But I mean, we know we know what was really going on in there.
Right.
This is where he would keep a lot of the stolen possessions that he took from his female victims, and for a while, this is where he would keep the bodies. Also, he also had an intercom set up for this workshop, which his wife had to talk through that intercom whenever she wanted to say anything while he was in there. So if she just wanted to say, "Hey, dinner's done," she would have to go through this intercom to talk to him. So this is to the extent that he was making sure that no one else was coming into this, at least at this time. Obviously, this was the end of any type of intimacy that the married couple had, but for some reason, like we said, they still didn't get a divorce. His wife even found nude pictures of women in a mold of a breast.
That's
Yeah.
I mean, and that was during the time of the murders, right? So the mold she had found was from a dead woman's breast.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about that a little later. I have it written down, but something I've written down here. I don't know if it's the correct time for it, really, but supposedly he was having headaches and blackouts. So he was having these crazy migraines, and he was having blackouts. And I don't know how true this is. I mean, I read it through multiple sources, but he says that he would find relief from these really insane migraines by going out and stealing panties. That was what he was saying. No, I'm just saying it's probably bullshit, but that's what he was saying.
Anything to numb, man. Anything to numb.
Yeah, I guess
numb those headaches.
I guess.
So in 1967, Jerry followed a woman home because he liked the way her shoes looked. And I believe what caught his eye were like bright red high heels.
Yeah, of course.
And now when she got home, he waited until she was asleep and then he broke into her house. He raped her and strangled her. And before he left, he, obviously made sure to take the shoes with him. Now, this would mark the beginning of what would be a 13-month murder spree from Jerry. Linda Slauson was a 19-year-old door-to-door encyclopedia saleswoman. She knocked on Jerry's door in January of 1968. Jerry saw something in Linda that he liked. Maybe it was her shoes, or maybe it was the ease of access. After all, she had just walked right up to his door. So at this point, there is also something we forgot to mention. At this point in time, his mother was also living in the house, along with his wife and children. Now, with his mother and his children at the house full time, he was actually able to lure Linda down to the basement, presumably with the promise of buying the encyclopedias. I'm not sure what he told her to coax her down. Yeah. But she followed him down either way, and when the time was right, Jerry knocked her out with a wooden plank, and then he strangled her to death. Now, at this point, he would dress her dead body up in all of the different women's undergarments he had stolen and collected throughout his years. And he would eventually use a hacksaw to cut off her left foot. He would keep this in his freezer in the workshop and pull it out whenever he wanted to model shoes that he had, taken or come across or however he got them. And then he would eventually dispose of Linda's body in the Willamette River, which would eventually become the burial place for the rest of his victims as well. It's crazy. Yeah. He was, he ended up dumping all those bodies into the river.
Yep. That's, keeps going back to where he thinks it works.
And he dumped him off of this bridge, and I want to say the bridge was right by his house. It wasn't far at all. He passed this bridge every day to go to work as well. So
he's lazy. So Jerry would take some time before he would choose his next victim. Jan Susan Whiteley was. Jan Susan Whitney was 23 years old at the time of her abduction and murder. Jan's car broke down on Interstate 5 between Albany and Salem, Oregon. She was returning home from a Thanksgiving feast with her family. This happened on November 26, 1968. So 10 months or so after his abduction and murder of Linda Slauson. Jerry saw the car on the side of the road, and I imagine he saw this as an opportunity, preying on the weak, but also, this woman needs help on the side of the road. So he offered Jan a ride home in his warm car, where he said she could use his phone to call a tow truck. While she's in the car, however, he strangled her to death. I believe that he also, not just people believe that he also raped her dead body while still in the car. And,
what he did, by the way, to to kill her, he while they were waiting because what happened was when her car broke down, he told her, we can go back to my house, I have the part. So they went back to his house, and all the doors were locked in the house. So he told her, we're gonna have to wait for my wife to get here. By the way, the doors weren't locked. He just told her this. Yeah, so while they were quote unquote waiting, he asked her if she wanted to play a game. She was like, sure, whatever. And so the game that he proposed was, you have to tell me how to tie a knot. Or how to tie a bow without actually showing me. So, what he did was, so that way she could just use her words, he, went into the back seat so he couldn't, see, her hands moving, telling him how to do it. And then that's how he ended up, positioning himself to killing her.
Oh, okay.
And then he had a leather strap in the back seat and choked her out.
Yep.
Now, Jerry would take Jan's body back to his house. He would take her back to his workshop and then hang her by a hook attached to a pulley. Now, he would also dress her body in the different clothing he had acquired, take pictures of her, and then rape her body as well for several days. With Jan, Jerry decided to cut off her breasts and make a breast mold out of them, which he would end up using them as paperweights, which at this point, he's not using them as paperweights. They're decoration at that point. Yeah. Now, I imagine that they're the same molds that his wife found, which makes me ask what the fuck she actually thought was going on, which is so true. It's like, what are you... Yeah. I mean, that's a real ride or die right there. When you're starting to find stuff like that, and you, would you tell yourself to forget that and sleep at night?
I mean, yeah, exactly. Why, if you just found breast molds in your house?
If my significant other found even a silicone boob just laying around willy nilly, I would be in big trouble.
It wouldn't be a mold. Even it couldn't even have, you could just. It'd be anything like that, but especially a breast mold. Yeah.
Very strange, very strange. Anyway, he would eventually tie her body to a piece of railroad iron and throw her into the Willamette River. Her car was later found at the rest stop on Interstate 5.
Yeah. So he must have taken her car back there.
Yeah, he ended up fixing her car, which is kind of, it threw cops off because, they were like... okay, her car is working just fine.
That's pretty weird.
It appears she just got out of her car and walked somewhere. Yeah. So that threw off.
Maybe he was just bored and he was like, I'm just going to do it.
Right.
Yeah. So Jerry would wait 4 more months before gaining control of another victim. Karen Sprinkler was 19 years old when she was abducted and murdered by Jerry. On March 27th, 1969, Karen was supposed to meet her mother for lunch at a department store restaurant, but she never showed up. And this was not like her at all. As we usually see in these type of cases, it's just not like people to not show up. I mean, that's just not how people are. So her mother got very worried, as you do. It is later revealed by Jerry that he abducted her at gunpoint in the parking lot garage of where she was supposed to meet her mother. He took Karen back to his workshop where he raped her multiple times and toyed with her. He forced her to dress up in different undergarments like he's done before, but this time she was still alive. And like he's done in the past as well, he was taking photos of her and he killed her by hanging and strangling her by the neck from the hook attached to his ceiling.
Yeah, this is really weird too because she was alive this time. He had like taken someone who was alive, but instead of his usual was the victim was dead by the time they showed up to his shed, and this time he had her. This is weird. He had her tied up. And then once he had her tied up and scared, he actually left the shed, went inside, ate dinner with his family. And when he came back out, she had undone her binds. Like she like her hands were free. And this is weird. There's like speculation on why she was still there. Either if she had just broken free or she was petrified because of fear, which is,
Yeah, and also she probably doesn't really know where she's at, right? I mean...
But enough to like get the fuck out.
You can at least try. I mean, yeah, it's always hard to speculate exactly what someone is feeling or doing in that exact situation. It's kind of weird. Something that Jerry would do after he abducted and murdered his victims is put on high heels and women's clothes himself and masturbate to it. Obviously, this is something that he did to satisfy his sexual urges. Shows that he wouldn't have stopped abducting and raping women until he was caught, because I think the urge was just too strong,
Definitely. Now, a month after the abduction and murder of Karen Sprinkler, Jerry attempted to abduct a woman named Sharon Wood. Sharon was 24 at the time, and this was April 21st, 1969. And later in the afternoon of that day, Sharon left her secretarial job with the intent to go and meet her husband in a basement level of a parking garage. And they were actually going to meet to have a divorce meeting. The couple was splitting up.
Yep.
And this particular day, that's where she was going.
Another parking garage.
Right, yeah, and that's sort of a common place where most of this stuff happens.
I mean,
with
it
him.
kind of makes sense because parking garages are dark. There's not a ton of people in there. I mean, people just coming to and from their car, but not like, usually not a ton of people. You can probably get away, especially at the right time of day.
Yeah, it's a great place to kidnap someone if you're into that sort of thing.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. While she was looking for her husband, she noticed a man approaching her. She said later that she, had some sort of sense she was being followed, eerie feelings. She had even tried to go to a more populated part of the garage, but I guess it was sort of too late.
Yeah, it seems like maybe she... when I first read that, I didn't really know how to I read that from two different sources. I didn't really know how to take that. I don't know if maybe she tried to, she noticed that she was being followed and she just thought maybe if I go over here, it'll be more populated, I guess. I'm not really sure.
I've heard her telling of this, and it sounds like as she was going to a more populated place, like Jerry sort of like stopped her. You know what I mean? Like he was like trying to get to her.
That's true.
From this point.
That makes sense. I don't know.
Jerry actually approached Sharon from the back, obviously, and he tapped her on the shoulder. When she turns around, she notices he's holding a pistol. And Sharon's really cool. At this point, she decides that hearing her telling of it, she says she knows automatically, immediately, she's not going with this dude. So that's a pretty good indicator of the fighting spirit in this woman. But anyway, they end up getting into a scramble. He tries to grip her up. She screams, and he grabs her by the arm and tries to put her in a headlock. Now she decides that if she doesn't scream and fight back and try to get someone's attention, she's probably gonna die. She already has the fight or flight senses going. And so as she's screaming and kicking him, Jerry tries to put his hand over her mouth, obviously to silence her screams. And at this point, Sharon bites down as hard as she can on his thumb, I believe. And her jaw, she's so scared, her jaw actually locks up on his thumb. So she's sort of attached to him at this point. And they find themselves in sort of a precarious situation here. Now, as he's trying to get free from the bite, he ends up like smacking her head on the concrete to try and get her to let go. She won't let go. You know, obviously she's dazed at this moment, but her jaw. It's so weird. That has to be some sort of fear response, obviously, but. It ended up working to her favor. During this, Jerry can hear a car coming, so he gets spooked. And as soon as Sharon hears the car, her jaw lets up, and she lets go of him. And then Jerry basically runs away. He scatters back in the garage somewhere, and. He runs away and then actually ends up coming back to her to grab his gun and then leaves again. The gall of this guy. And
well, yeah, I guess he figures that if he doesn't get it, then he's probably screwed.
Right.
You know,
Now, it's important to note here that Sharon didn't get a great look at him, but she knew enough to know that this guy had red hair, he was big, he had freckles, but she didn't get a perfect sort of view on him.
Yeah, I mean, she's fighting him the entire time, so... And, you know, she did what you should... You know, in this situation, this is what you should do every time. It seems like... You know, I was watching this one of my favorite true crime channels. I think it was yesterday that this case came on, and this lady was abducted at gunpoint, exactly like Sharon was. And you know, you can't say, you know, this is what you have to do. Like in that moment, it's really hard for, you know, you don't know how you're going to react. But how Sharon reacted is really what you should do. I mean, just whatever you do, just freak and scream and fight, you know, because like, I mean, if they get you, then they got you.
Then you're done.
You're done. And a lot, you know, because why are they going to, you know, I mean, in the case like this, they're going to kill you. So yeah, it seems obvious, but you know, and again, like I said, I mean, it's hard to know how you'll react.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you sort of have to use your surroundings also as your advantage in this type of situation. She was actually able to do that. She was able to keep him there long enough to where a car would come, and obviously something was happening.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, she didn't have to take him down necessarily. She just had to slow him down long enough for someone to come, which she did.
Right.
So showing signs that Jerry was not at all discouraged from the unsuccessful abduction attempt, his next attempt was the very next day. On April 22nd, Gloria Smith, who was 15 years old at the time, was walking home from where she went to school. Jerry spotted Gloria and saw the opportunity. He tried to convince Gloria to get into the car, saying that he could give her a ride home. Luckily, she was very hesitant as to getting into a car with a stranger, as you should be. And supposedly, she saw someone that she knew doing yard work in front of her house. And Gloria called out to the woman that she knew, and that forced Jerry to give up and drive away.
Yeah, this is super telling to me also, like, so he's unsuccessul in this sort of kidnapping he has. The very next day he comes out and he tries to kidnap a 15-year-old girl, someone who's, you know, almost 10 years younger than the last girl he tried to abduct. You know, it's very clear and calculated what this guy is doing. He's just such a piece of trash. It makes me so upset. But yeah, he's like clearly picking on a younger victim because he knows that they're more likely to, or he's more likely to convince them to come with him, and he can manipulate them. And
you know, we already knew this, but you know, most of the time, I would say most of the time, serial killers are doing it for sexual pleasure. And this guy, it's like, dude, he is so desperate at this point. I mean, he is so desperate because the very next day, again, he went out looking for another victim. So at this point, he just needs somebody. He's like, he can't, you know, he has to get it. And after 2 unsuccessful attempts on the third day in a row, he successfully he did it. On April 23rd, Jerry successfully abducted 22-year-old Linda Saley from a mall parking lot.
So he brought Linda back to his home and he took her into his workshop. From that point, he then raped her and then strangled her to death like he had done to his previous victims. Now, he also, at this point, raped her corpse, and then he supposedly played around with the body like she was a toy. Not sure exactly what that means. Don't really want to know what that means in its full context.
Yeah.
But you can, I'm sure you can imagine what he was doing in there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is worth noting as well. He even attempted to send like a very high voltage electrical current through Linda's body because he wanted to see if it would make the body jump or move at all.
Which is, that's not going to work, Jerry.
Come on, that's insane. That's insane. How do you have time to do this?
Yeah, well, his wife doesn't give a shit anymore. She's just letting him do whatever he wants in his workshop.
Wow.
So he doesn't care about his kids, so he's probably in his workshop for hours, just doing whatever he wants.
Wow. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, needless to say, that experiment did not work. And after he was done, he tied her body to a car transmission with a nylon cord and threw everything into the Willamette River. And by that, I mean her body, like all of his other victims. Mm-hmm. Now, unlike his other victims, he didn't cut off Linda's breasts to make a mold out of them. So maybe he's showing some sympathy there. What a good guy.
Yeah, I don't know all of which victim. I don't know for sure. I can't remember. You might have to look this up for me, everyone who's listening. I think it was 2 victims that he did that with. I could be wrong, though. But either way, he didn't do it to her. He had enough breast molds to satisfy his needs for breast molds. And I'm sorry. So in May of 1969, a fisherman found the bodies of Linda Saley and Karen Sprinkler in the Long Tom River. The police noticed the nylon rope that was tied around the body of Linda Saley and was tied in a very specific way. The copper wire had been twisted in such a way that they suspected whoever had done it had some type of background as an electrician. Because they found the bodies of Linda and Karen, who were both college students at the time, the investigators decided it would be best to question other university students. They found multiple students that said things about a man trying to lure people into his car and a pudgy man with red hair trying to talk to multiple women. One woman claimed that she had went on a date with Jerry, but that he was very off-putting and he really creeped her out. And that she wouldn't see him again. And, that sounds like our guy. It's also said that he wanted to discuss the bodies that were found in the river at one point, and he had asked her why she wasn't afraid of meeting a strange man and going on a date like that. And, why she wasn't afraid that he might strangle her.
Which is probably a dead giveaway. You're on a date with a serial killer.
So I think she got off pretty lucky.
Yeah.
The last line got the police really interested. But like I said, she had no intentions of ever seeing him again. But the police asked her that if this man contacted her again, to give them a call.
Yeah, and eventually Jerry did contact her again, and they set up a place to meet. The woman contacted the police. I think actually Jerry had contacted her. He said something like, "Hey, I'm in the area. If you can meet me in the next 15 minutes." Let's meet up and go. And she came back and said something like, I can meet up. Give me an hour though. And, come, I believe she said, come to my dorm. And it's at this point where he says, okay, he obliges. And then right after that, she calls the police, obviously giving them enough time to get to her and intercept, Jerry as he comes to the campus So when Jerry showed up, they had talked to him, the police that is. The police had talked to him and asked him some questions, and they noted that Jerry seemed completely at ease. Jerry gave them a false address, which of course, concreted their suspicions. At the time, however, they had nothing real to arrest him for, so they let him go, but they definitely kept him under surveillance. This was, out of the norm, and he sort of fit the description of someone who had been doing shady things and trying to be creepy. Mm-hmm. So at this point, this is where they found out where he actually lived, and they also found out that he was an electrician. They decided to dive into his background a little bit more, and then they come up with his previous going to a mental institution, being diagnosed with all of these things, choking women. The police, start to piece together this puzzle very slowly, but definitely very surely. Mm-hmm. Now as coincidence after coincidence started to pile up, they had enough to actually get a search warrant for his car. However, this was in vain. They found that the car had recently been detailed, so they found absolutely nothing except for a gun.
Which is honestly, that's pretty suspicious in and of itself. I mean, look, people get their cars detailed, but I'm just saying, if you're... I just find it odd that a lot of times when cops go and look at cars that they think, with the warrant and that they think something may have happened, they've just been detailed. It happens a lot in these kind of cases,
Oh yeah, and I think during one of the murders he actually talked about too. When it may have been Linda Slauson actually, he said that after he cut her breasts off, he packed her open wounds with brown butcher tape, so that way, butcher paper, so that way she wouldn't bleed all over his car.
He's trying.
He's a real piece of garbage.
Yeah.
Now, anyway, they found a gun. However, when they showed a picture spread to the girl who was almost abducted and put into the car, she definitely picked Jerry out of the lineup, and this was enough to arrest him and then give the judge enough evidence to go ahead and grant a search warrant for his house. Now, at his garage, the police found the copper wire that was the same copper wire they found had been... The bodies were tied to whatever the car part, and then the train railing, I guess.
Yeah, and also, just in general, and it was just the same cord, for sure.
It was the same cord, and then it was the same knot as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so that's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, yep. So the detectives, they're trying to piece together everything and get a confession. That's what they do. So Anne, I'm going to quote something real quick. Anne Rule quotes in her book, in January 1968, Jerry Brutos had lived in the same neighborhood worked by the young encyclopedia salesgirl, the missing Linda Slauson. Brutos had indicated that he had moved to Salem in August or September of 1968 and had gone to work in Lebanon, Oregon, by the 1-5 freeway where Jan Whitney had vanished in November. His current job was in Halsey, only 6 miles from the body sites in Long Tom. And of course, when Karen Sprinkler had disappeared from Meyer and Frank on March 27th, Brutos had lived only blocks away. So the point of that is he's not going very far from where he's picking up these women.
And everywhere he goes, death follows.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And so he's, like I said, he's not going very far. He's keeping it to, I think it just goes, he's keeping it to a confined area, and I think it goes to say, like what you said earlier, coincidence after coincidence just started piling up. So it was a lot that they had on him. On May 30th, against the advice of his attorneys, Jerry decided he would talk under interrogation and consequently confess to the killings because he's an idiot. But whatever. Jerry broke down all of the details in the murders, from how he kept the left foot of Linda Slauson while he got rid of the rest of her. And to try and convince his family to go to their favorite fast food joint so they could get rid of Linda's body, which was still laying on the floor of his workshop while he was talking with his family. So, yeah, he's just trying to get his whole family, his wife, kids, and his mother to go out so he can get rid of Linda's body. And the only reason I said he's an idiot for talking to the police, I mean, I'm glad he got caught, and maybe he wanted to confess, but look, don't ever talk to the cops, no matter what. If you know,
it's not the first time we've said this on the podcast.
Just don't do it. Every time I watch videos all the time, like constantly watching true crime stuff, and most of the time they're in there with the cops, and they're really stupid, and detectives are really smart, and they know what to say. You know what I'm saying? And especially if you didn't do something. Definitely don't talk to the cops.
Let's rephrase. If you're a victim, talk to the cops, right?
Yeah. If you're a victim, talk to them. I'm just saying if you're in there, and especially if you didn't do something and they start trying to accuse you of stuff low key, like, don't try to get out of it with your own words, because the words that the detectives use are going to be better than yours. Sure. And if you did do something, fuck it, talk to them, because you probably deserve to go to prison. So whatever.
So on June 28th, 1969, Jerry pled guilty to 3 first-degree murders, and that is Sprinkler, Whitney, and the Saley murders. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive terms of life imprisonment in the Oregon State Penitentiary. He also confessed to the murder of Linda Slauson. But because he didn't take the pictures of her body and only kept her left foot, they didn't attempt to charge him for this. He was given a life sentence for all 3 first-degree murders. Yeah. I'm sorry. Now, Jerry was a model prisoner and even a computer expert. Obviously, he had been working on computers and doing stuff with electrical his
stuff
whole
with
life.
Electricity.
Yeah, I think he worked at a radio station doing electromechanical engineering, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So he was a shoo-in when it came to that stuff in prison. He would go on the parole board multiple times, hoping that he would be able to be released eventually. We all know how this ends. How he never ended up showing any remorse for his victims. In his eyes, he was the victim of his mother's abuse, which is true to an extent, but that is what led him to kill eventually.
Yeah, and it's not an excuse. So.
Yeah, and while he was a model prisoner, the parole board continued to state that he would never be released from prison. Obviously, no way.
And while he was incarcerated, he had piles of women's shoe catalogs in his cell. He wrote to major companies asking for them and claimed they were his substitute for pornography, which I don't have a hard time believing. He lodged countless appeals, including one in which he alleged that a photograph taken of him with one of his victims' corpses could not prove his guilt because it was not the body of a person he was convicted of killing. So that's, he's a real
model citizen, this guy.
He's a genius. Didn't just admit that he killed someone that he didn't get convicted of.
He figured it out.
Like you said earlier, in 1995, the parole board told Brutos he would never be released. You just said that, but yeah. Just like the parole board said, he was never released. He died on March 26, 2006 from liver cancer. And he was the longest incarcerated inmate in the Oregon Department of Corrections at the time of his death, which was a total of 37 years.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
Yeah. It's he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, if you guys are interested in more about this case, go and check out Sharon Wood's interviews on. She may even have a book out, but she's done a couple interviews. Very interesting story to hear her retell what happened to her. It's crazy, and it gives you a good sense of how ruthless this guy really was.
Yep. Okay, well, thanks for listening to this. We're gonna try to do it more often, like we said. If you got into this part, we really appreciate it. Leave a comment below, or send us an email. I'll put the email in the description of this video, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. Also, with if you have any suggestions for future content, which we have so many suggestions backlogged, anyways, but suggest it. Because it might be something we haven't heard of. It might be something really interesting.
Yeah, if you guys have anything that isn't a murder, also send that to us. If you have like weird stories, send it. We're not biased to just doing murders or serial killers, or just send us anything you think we will think is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I think I have an idea for a couple episodes for sure. But we'll see.
Yeah, we got some
one
stuff
written.
cooking up.
I have one written. I have the. I can't even think of it right now, but
I have it in the email. It's something. Don't give it away.
yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for listening.
Later.